Welcome to Citizens for Community Media. I'm here in South Bend with Dr. E. Michael Jones, and I've asked him to come on because we're in the thick of this President-elect Biden versus he's not President-elect war camps developing here. And what's developing is something Mike is super familiar with and has written a lot about. And I think, I don't know where he's going to go exactly, but I think he might start with 1953 in Iran. I never get the word right. Mogadishu.
Yeah, it's Mogadishu. No,
Mosaddegh.
Mosaddegh. Yeah, Mohammad Mosaddegh. So 1953 was an important year because it was the beginning of the world as we know it now. The new security state finally kicked in. The CIA was approved in 1947 when Harry Truman was president. It's one of the biggest mistakes he ever made. He lived to regret it. He said after Kennedy was assassinated, 10 years after 53, he said that it had become a rogue operation and nobody was in control. Certainly the elected representatives were not in control. So the dynamic is already there. Okay, who runs the country? We have a constitution, we have provisions for elected representatives being the representatives of the people, and the government is supposed to be run by them. But there are people who think they're smarter than the people of the United States of America, and they infest agencies like the CIA. CIA was recruited, originally all the CIA members were from Skull and Bones at Yale or some other secret society in Yale. Well, you can see the dynamic. Yale's an elite school. Skull and Bones is an elite society within an elite school, and these guys know better than the people of the United States, so don't hinder these people from doing what they know best, which is at this point fighting communism. And we all know we have to fight communism, so what's your problem here? Well, this attitude, beginning with the anti-communism crusade, just grew. It grew and it grew and it grew. And this group of people basically took over the government of the United States of America. So, but it began in 53. And so we have the situation in Iran. The Iranians have had democratic elections, and Mosaddegh is a popular leader, and he basically nationalizes the British oil company, which had been exploiting Iranian resources with virtually no payback whatsoever. Okay, now we're at the dawn of the oil era, where you need lots and lots of oil. 1 year later, the United States starts on one of the biggest construction projects in human history, otherwise known as the interstate highway system, which was a kind of stupid idea to begin with, because if you notice, it's the same system in the Bronx as it is in Oklahoma. And if you're in the Bronx, you do 5 miles an hour, and you're lucky, you think you're lucky if you can move at all. And if you're in Oklahoma, 75 is too slow. So it doesn't make sense. But the automobile lobby wanted it. They thought that they needed to be paid back for their contribution to the war effort, and they got it. And we're stuck with it. And it wrecked cities across the country, wrecked them. We have a totally new system. This all started right around this time. So in 53, the United States had already made a deal with Saudi Arabia. On his way back from, I believe it was Yalta, the conference during World War II, President Roosevelt stopped off in Saudi Arabia, and he saw the way it was going. We need oil, and so he made a deal with the family of Saud that, okay, you sell us your oil at a reasonable price, and we'll protect you from anyone. The United States military, the most powerful in the world, will protect you. So they made the deal, and that's fine. And they gave the Saudis a pretty good deal. The fact that Aramco has been around for this long to this day is a sign that it was a pretty good deal, because both parties were satisfied. All the United States had to do at this moment in time was to offer the Iranians the same deal. And they would have kissed our hand, because Iranians love Americans in spite of everything. They would have kissed our hand and we wouldn't have had any conflict. But no, what you have here is the old elitist mentality pervading the whole atmosphere once again. What is this elite? Well, we feel actually, we people from Skull and Bones who went to Yale, like William F. Buckley, we actually feel more of an affinity to the ruling class in England than we do to the working class in America, who happen to be our fellow citizens. Pat Buchanan talked about this. It was called the Great Rapprochement at the end of the 19th century, where basically impecunious British lords like Randolph Churchill went to America looking for wives who were the children of fabulously wealthy American industrialists. And they cemented these marriages, and Winston Churchill was born of that marriage. So they abandoned common sense. The elites were in charge. It wasn't the people of the United States who made this decision. And they decided that we're going to try out something new now, and it's called psychological warfare. And this was in many ways the first real attempt to do it. So Kermit Roosevelt goes to Tehran, and what you do is you buy off the media. You buy them off. It's easy to buy them off. You can buy the damn thing if you got enough money, but you can buy them off probably even more easily. And then once you secure them, then they are the people who are going to be responsible for the narrative. And then at that point, there's an election, or you don't even need an election. But let's say assume there's an election. You claim that there was fraud. You get the people agitated. The people go out onto the streets, and now they're being egged on by the newspapers and the TV and the radio. This was stolen.
Well, now they're saying there's fraud in ours, and in the past, they never really made it a huge issue.
Well, it's never been as polarized as it is now, and the media have never been more powerful. So once they get that powerful, so you basically control the media. That means you control the narrative. So it's the same thing. Any banana republic, if the military engage in a coup d'etat, the first thing they do is send in the tanks, and the tanks surround the radio station. And then you control, so the president can't get on the radio, and so we're going to tell you what's going on. Well, you're starting to see similarities, I take it. So Twitter is now banning Trump. Twitter is now more powerful than the United States of America. So back to Tehran, it gets out of control. Kermit has the Shah, Reza Pahlavi. His father had been king, or whatever he was, in Iran during the 1930s. This is his son. Sounds like a good prospect, except that the kid is scared to death, and he runs away. What are we going to do now? The thing failed. And so Kermit gets a call from Langley in Virginia, and they say, look, it flopped. Sorry, you did your best, but time to come home. And Kermit says, no, I think we should give it another try. And so Kermit brings the Shah back, ratchets everything up again, and the whole thing collapses, and he succeeds. And Mosaddegh falls, and the Shah is put in his place. And that has been causing problems ever since. Because it's not right. What they did was not right, and you can't have a firm foundation when it's based on injustice. But what happened here is that we set the pattern for what came to be known as the Color Revolution. So 1 year later, let's do it again. Let's do it in Guatemala.
Now, can you just give us the five things or whatever, what is the Color Revolution?
Okay, so first of all, you need a way of overturning, deposing a government. How do we depose the government? The crucial factors are usually an election and the media involvement in tabulating the election or certifying the election. Once you control those things, you can pretty much depose anybody. And that's pretty much what they did, because no one knew. Because the media were just starting. This is just the rise of television, just the beginning of television. Radio was easy to control. There's only one radio station, 2 radio stations maybe. They're easy to control. And also you've got the newspapers. There aren't a lot of them either. You can buy them all off, and they were totally on the side of Kermit Roosevelt and the CIA in Tehran in '53.
Kermit is one of the sons of
Franklin.
So he's like the third one probably.
Yeah, he's famous family, and so he was there, and one of the early participants in the CIA. So once you establish that, you can keep doing it, and they do it over and over and over again, and nobody seems to catch on. So let's fast forward to 2009. Let's go back to Tehran. Here we are back in Tehran again, and we got another color revolution. It's now called a color revolution. The color is green, and so you got all these Iranians in a similar situation. They're all wearing green bandanas, and they're all talking about how Ahmadinejad shouldn't have been elected. Ahmadinejad was in exactly the same situation that Trump is in now. He was a populist. He came to power after being mayor of Tehran, which is the biggest city there. Huge city. Nobody knows how many people live there. 13 million maybe.
Is that big?
In 1945, there were 250,000 people in Tehran. Now there's 13, 14 million. Nobody knows how many. They can't count that high. All grew up after the automobile, no trains, monumental traffic jams wherever you go. It's just part of life there. You can't escape it. It's not a pleasant place. If I had to choose, I mean, very nice people. I've made a lot of contacts there, but if I had to choose a place to go on vacation, it would not be Tehran. Okay, high-rise buildings, traffic jams, not my idea of a good time. So now you've got the same situation. The elites don't like Ahmadinejad. They think he's too confrontational with the United States. They want to get along. They want to do business. Let's dial it down a little bit. But the people like him, and the people elected him. So what do? Well, you say you allege fraud, and then you get the people out on the street, and then the next crucial element is someone's got to die. So there was a big demonstration in front of the Basiji, and then suddenly someone starts shooting. Now, because you control the media are going to say it was Ahmadinejad who gave the order to do the shooting. We've been through this before in Syria. Assad is killing his own people. How many times did I hear that from the dominant media? And then they've got a guy, Mr. Papala, and he's the God's honest truth. And he's sitting here in front of us, and he says exactly what CBS wants to hear, about what a bad guy Assad is, And then we'll go past the billboard, and nobody can read it anyway, but in Arabic it says, "Thank God for Iran and Russia. They're saving us from the ISIS crowd." So there you have it, and that's pretty much what we have today. Same situation here in the United States of America. So now we have widespread evidence of election fraud.
No, okay, so based on what you're saying, and just to go back, why do they say color revolution? Is it because it's like under the color of law?
No, because they assign a color.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's the color here?
No, this is a colored revolution because we got Black Lives Matter involved. So there's no color here. Okay, but the man who perfected this, I mean, I'm jumping ahead when I get to Tehran in 2009. What you need to do is go back to the period after the fall of the Soviet Union, 1991. Well, virtually when all of these republics broke away, virtually everyone had a color revolution. Most recent example of that is Armenia. Armenia is now an independent country. There's a large, as with that whole place over there, the ethnic minorities, ethnic groups don't necessarily follow the boundary lines between states. So the Kurds are in Iraq, they're in Turkey, and they're in Syria. Okay, an ethnic group. They'd like their own homeland. It's not going to happen. Hasn't happened yet. So the Armenians are all over the place. They were all over the place during the time of the Ottoman Empire, when there was an independent country. for a while, and then it got absorbed into the Soviet Union, where it's a socialist republic. It goes back and forth. Well, now they're an independent country, but there's Azerbaijan has a large Armenian minority there. It's Nagorno-Karabakh is what they call it. The Armenians call it Artsakh. And the Azeris attacked this enclave. And that called forth a reaction from the Armenians. The Armenian President Pashinyan waved the bloody shirt. He started talking about the Armenian genocide. And we're going to fight these people. And the Armenians volunteered, and they're ready to go and fight for these things and battle back and forth. Of course, the one player here that nobody mentions is Israel, which is supplying Azerbaijan with weapons, sophisticated weapons, drones that are taking out the Armenian tanks. And suddenly it doesn't look as if things are going well for the Armenians. Now, Pashinyan came to power in 2018 with a color revolution. Okay? And he was financed by George Soros. Now, you've heard of him before. We've talked about him before. I was just
looking at his background last night.
Yeah, so if this were Fox News, we could not mention the name George Soros, because Newt Gingrich tried that. And he was upbraided by the info babe. I forget her name, but anyway, we can't bring up his name. And Newt gets this look on his face. Newt didn't get the memo. You would think that someone an insider like Newt would have gotten the memo, but he hadn't.
He's mad about it too, I think.
Is he?
Yeah, well, I hear him speaking out more than he normally does.
He should be mad, because you should be able to say the word George Soros, the name George Soros. He's the reason that Pashinyan's in power there, and Pashinyan just sold out the people of Artsakh, the Armenians. He sold them out. He basically brokered a separate peace, and nobody knows where he is, because if they find him, they're going to lynch him. I don't know what they do in Armenia, but if it were Alabama, they would lynch the guy. Because he betrayed the Armenian people. What do you expect? He's a Soros puppet. The only reason he got in was because of Soros money. You expect him to die for Armenia when he's a Soros puppet? No, that's not the way it works.
I grew up, I'm Norway. My great-grandfather, but the worst word was quisling. I grew up from get-go.
Right.
Quisling. Ooh.
Quisling. Yeah, so Pashinyan's a quisling. And that's the latest development of color revolutions. Now, it's not the latest development. The latest development is America in 2020, where we have the same thing. So now we're being set up. So to bring this all together here, we had an election. Okay? Now, as in Tehran in '53, the CIA, the oligarchs, control the media, the mainstream media. They have been campaigning against Trump for 4 years now. They hate the guy. Trump has withstood every attack that they've thrown against him. And now this is the final attack, and we're not going to take no for an answer. And so the Democrats now engaged in massive voter fraud.
Now the CIA, haven't they always had an in with the media? I mean, they might marry somebody that's in the media. I mean, aren't they intertwined? Or is that...
Yeah, you can say it's the deep state. It's the oligarchs. The deep state has to have media now. They have to have media control now. It's just part of life in the 21st century. It was that way in the 20th century. I mean, the media are the most important factor in psychological warfare. Psychological warfare is the preventing of unauthorized communication among subject peoples. That's Christopher Simpson's version in The Science of Coercion.
But as far as the media, you can almost locate, this is my thing, I guess, but you can almost locate back in grade school and high school who's being groomed to be the media spokesman. I mean, they just don't come out of the blind. I mean, they're... No,
that's why we have Harvard and Yale. And
yeah,
so we have someone like Pete Buttigieg, our own Pete Buttigieg. This is to bring it back to South Bend. We were talking about this 4 years ago, when it was the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. That was the local version of this, minor version, and it was basically a contest between representative government and oligarchic power. And Indiana failed the test. Mike Pence was governor then. He's now vice president, and he failed. because he didn't understand what was going on.
Well, maybe he understands it now. Maybe. I mean, this is the hope.
Sure. I mean, let's hope he can figure it out now. But back then, he was on Meet the Press. This was all about, can you force people to bake wedding cakes for gay weddings? And goes on Meet the Press, and they say, well, doesn't this discriminate against homosexuals? Well, he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't understand what's going on. He say, look, this is not about homosexuals. This is an assault on representative government. That's what he should have said. Dismiss that. Smack that info babe in the face.
But Trump, with his background, he'd have an answer like that, just instinctively.
He does have a gift for the quick comeback. So it's been an attack on representative government. That's what it is today. Okay, but it's an advanced form, because now we're not talking about some Religious Freedom Restoration Act in an insignificant state like Indiana. We're talking about the presidency of the United States of America. But it's the same conflict. The people got it wrong. It's like, why did look, if they elected Trump, they are so stupid that they shouldn't be allowed to make these decisions. Because everybody knows that Trump is ridiculous. He's got that, the hair. I mean, if we had a truly educated republic here, with truly educated citizens of the sort that go to Yale and Harvard, they would have chosen Pete Buttigieg.
But he didn't make it through South Carolina.
Well, he didn't make it through South Carolina. There's another example.
Were you involved in making it hard for him to get through South Carolina?
Well, only Allah knows that. Maybe when I get to heaven, if I ever get there, I'll find out what role I played in this. But we were one of the first groups that started talking about the reality of the situation. And that basically, Pete, look, it's not, we're supposed to think, oh, he's a homosexual. Oh, let's focus on that. Well, really, what homosexuals are proxy warriors for the oligarchs. And that's what he is. He's a proxy warrior. He went to Harvard. Gosh, Harvard. I wish my son could go to, well, wait a minute, my son did go to Harvard. Wait a minute, what's wrong here?
But they think
there's something that I haven't figured out yet. No, Harvard's a tryout. You get in so you can try out to become a member of the Porcellian or in Yale Skull and Bones, so you can be a loyal, devoted follower of oligarchs and do with their bidding. And that's Pete succeeded massively. He never represented the people of Indiana. Never. Never represented the people of South Bend. South Bend was a stepping stone in his career. Never, whenever it came to the will of the people of South Bend, if it didn't go along with the oligarchic agenda, he would veto it. He didn't care about the will of the people. The abortion clinic, classic example, where the city council, hardly known for its zeal in the right to life movement, approved the alternative or vetoed the abortion clinic permit, and he overturns it because he's there. He's a consul, and he's there to make sure that the proles in South Bend don't do anything that upsets the oligarchs. That's the form of government that he represents, and that's what this is about.
Well, we've made a god out of the IQ and god out of money, and they have the money and they have the IQ.
That's right. That's right.
We have to just bow.
Yeah. Look, it's ipso facto. If you get a high score in your SATs, you're smart, right? I mean, it's the same thing, right? You're ipso facto smart. We're not supposed to talk about cheating on the SATs like the Jews at Kaplan prep course, cheating on that. That's in Nicholas Lemon's book, The Big Test.
When Stephen took on the leading Jews of the day and put them in their place, he had just been appointed a little deacon to take out the hand, wipe the tables.
Yeah.
They didn't like that.
No, they didn't like it. So here it is. It's representative government again, and the oligarchs. Who do these people think they are? Electing Donald Trump. We need better voters.
It was deplorable. Now we're to the despicables.
Yeah, we've gone so they vow. So the deep state is being threatened, and they have fought this guy the whole time. And every time he appoints somebody, it turns out that the guy he appointed doesn't represent him or his view. It represents the deep state that he's fighting against.
Well, you remember how the whole alternative media with the underground fax system. Okay, and that was with Randy Weaver at Ruby Ridge. Well, who do you think was defending the guy that shot Randy Weaver's wife?
Who?
William Barr. That's what I read. Okay, well, it started at Ruby Ridge. That's where the alternative media, the underground fax system, and then Koresh, it led to Waco.
Well, these are situations in general where the FBI is involved in creating the very incident they're protecting us from. That may have been different there, but we had this just in the election. We had the so-called attempt to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, foiled by the FBI. Thank God the FBI is.
Well, Trump was saying, if it wasn't for me, I mean, I rescued you.
It turns out that there were 6 guys, maybe 10 guys, and they were going to kidnap her and hold her on a boat in the middle of Lake Michigan. I'm not making this up, okay? And it turns out that Dana Nessel, the Jewish lesbian attorney general, who is also a product of Soros money, I hate to mention Soros again, but it keeps cropping up here. She held a press conference in which she said, we could not have done this without the help of the FBI. So 5 days later, after she says that, the conspirators get arraigned. The first thing the lawyer says, the only person who was advocating violence in this group was the FBI infiltrator. So it was an agent provocateur, and it was entrapment, and it'll go the same way that the whole hoodery thing went here 4 years ago, also in Michigan.
Kalamazoo?
No, I think it was, I don't remember exactly. Southwestern Michigan. 6 guys in a trailer park with a .22 single-action rifle and 3 bullets, and they're going to overthrow the government of the United States of America. Thank God the FBI got involved. We barely dodged that attempt to overthrow the government, okay? So again, as soon as the trial opens, the defense lawyer says, well, wait a minute. The only guy who was advocating violence, it turns out he's an FBI agent. So now we've got a situation where the FBI is collaborating with Dana Nessel, who hates Donald Trump, who is in cahoots with Gretchen Whitmer and her Jocelyn, the Secretary of State, who is associated with the SPLC.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the real athletic one.
Okay, so, and the FBI is working with these people to overthrow the President of the United States of America by a man appointed by Donald Trump. The guy who was head of the FBI had been appointed by Donald Trump. So you realize how the oligarchs are not going to take no for an answer. And so there was massive voter fraud in Michigan. These are pivotal states, massive voter fraud in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. 110% of the people, registered voters, showed up to vote, which is laudatory. I mean, we have to give it to the people of Wisconsin.
It's a lot of effort.
I mean,
they always say give 110%.
So in the heyday of communist elections, only 99% of the people would show up for the election and vote for the only candidate that was available. But we've gone beyond that. Wisconsin, 110%. Thank you, Wisconsin. So massive voter fraud. And now it looks to me as that is an idea that will get you banned from social media now. If you start talking about election fraud, you will be banned. And so what happened is that the story kept spreading. And the media, the mainstream media, you know they're lying. You know they're lying because they are so over the top with these stories. Like it's not only we have to call this guy President-elect Joe Biden. Well, wait a minute, he hasn't been elected yet. We haven't even counted the votes yet. The Electoral College has not made any type of decision here. We have a month to go before the Electoral College comes together. All we have are the news media. Well, we're back at square one. We're back in Tehran in 1953 now. because all of the news media agree that Donald Trump has been elected. Well, even Fox News. And so it turns out that the Jew who's the head of the decision desk at Fox News betrayed Trump. So much for gratitude among this group of people. Another guy, interestingly, who betrayed Donald Trump is none other than his closest friend, Benjamin Netanyahu.
Oh, your neighbor? Your high school...
My high school buddy, yeah. Who congratulated Joe Biden on winning. When it's not, no, he didn't win yet. Why are you doing this?
I was watching, there's so much on the internet on this, but some guy, I think it was a psychiatrist, was quoting, I think his name was Dalrymple, and he was saying, dealing with communism, but the goal is to make it such an obvious lie, and then make the people live that lie. I mean, act like it's true.
Yeah,
it's
you
totally
have to
humiliating.
live the lie, yes, and then you're completely docile because you're imposing this lie on yourself. So we have articles like, Jill Biden, First Lady-elect, is not going to quit her job. Well, we're having human interest stories about people. Wait a minute, your husband hasn't been elected yet. Don't you think we're smart enough to know that? No, you don't think that. They are overplaying their hand here. They are way overplaying their hand. In 2000, we had a contested election in Florida, and for 30 days, the only news was about Florida. So you at least admitted that there was a conflict. Now you have a contested election that is a whole different magnitude, and they're completely suppressing any type of discussion of it.
They had. I saw a scene like the two top Fox, maybe Brett Baer, and then the lady. But the lady, the real pretty lady for Fox, was on there.
They're all pretty.
Right, and her guest was
You have to be pretty to get the job.
And the guest was a homely lawyer woman from D.C. And so the discussion was the homely lawyer is saying, well, hold it here. How can you be president-elect? That's up to the authorities, And the pretty one just looks at her with disdain, and goes, well, we've declared it. We've declared it. It's like, in your face.
Well, the New York Times said that the press declares the winner. So it's like, well, every time I look at the thermometer, there's a temperature there. Did the thermometer create the temperature? Did the thermometer make it snow?
Well, aren't you press? You're an investigative journalist. That's one big part of your identity. You're really good at getting into stuff. Why can't, they have more authority than you?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, they do. I know that comes as a shock to you, but it's true. Because I don't write for the New York Times. And you can't write now. For even they had this editor who was, by our standards, completely politically correct, and she got driven out of the New York Times. So it's this, what you're seeing is this fanaticism now that has just taken on, it's like a moral panic. It's like the Salem witch trial, where suddenly everyone is infected by this craziness. Everyone on that side. And huge polarization now. So it looks as if, so what we said 4 years ago is now coming completely true. It's going to come down to a contest between representative government and the oligarchs, in particular their media.
But what happened 4 years ago, in a sense, we won. We were able to shift the narrative locally here. And then the idea was that it might have had a domino effect. The narrative that we shifted here carried over to South Carolina.
It went to North Carolina. So after it left here, suddenly there was people, you forget about it, but there was this big issue about gender-neutral bathrooms. And that became the issue, and they were threatening to remove what was it? Is it the Super Bowl that was going to be in North Carolina or something like that? If you don't go along with gender-neutral bathrooms, we're going to pull the plug on the Super Bowl.
And you guys will lose.
Was that Georgia?
$500 million.
You can't. I don't do that. Oh no! And finally, some guy, a legislator in North Carolina, wakes up and he says, "This is an attack on representative government." Well, it took about 4 states before the dime dropped, before people started talking about discrimination against homosexuals or transgendered people, as if that were the issue. That's not the issue. That's a joke. It's representative government. And you, I don't care. Oh, these losers in Indiana, they elected you. I don't care about that. Who cares about Indiana? You do what you're told. And we're going to tell you what we're told. And now we're going through exactly the same thing. The media have gone into a total frenzy over a kind of negative frenzy, if that's possible, where it's not so much that they are ferocious in their attack, they're ferocious in suppressing the very news that they're supposed to be reporting. So 2000, it was a contest between Gore and Bush. Well, doesn't that sell newspapers? When you got a contest like that, I mean, I have to get up every morning and did Gore win or did Bush win? You know, I keep going.
Well, the NFL football is way down. This is a lot more interesting than Aaron Rodgers.
But it's not being touched at all. There is no contest. The only time it's mentioned is when, you know, like Trump, the lunatic, has delusions that there was cheating. Oh no! Wait a minute. Isn't that a little tendentious? Aren't you? Is that reporting, or is that basically telling?
The thing is, they got like that. Mike Flynn has an attorney, Sidney Powell.
Yeah.
And she gets up and she goes, well, you know, every state sometimes 1 out of 1,000, just when they fill in the blank for president, they don't do the senator. So like maybe out of 1 million, you get 1,000 that didn't do the senator. Well, in Michigan and these places, it's 150,000 instead of 1,000. Because to pull the operation off, they just had to go president. They didn't have time.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Mike doing the show here. Because he understands how the computer, it works. He goes, oh, they wouldn't have been able to do the whole thing. Well, no, I know it.
No. I worked at the polls here. I was the head of the polls for years here for elections, and they had big machines that weighed about 5 tons that they'd roll in, you know, and you'd pull a lever and a little number would click in the back. And then at 6 o'clock, you close the polls.
Yeah, but all these mail-ins, see.
Well, they've confused the whole thing. You know, mail-in, when you go here to vote here, you have to show your ID. Well, you don't have to show anything when you mail it in. So the potential for fraud has increased.
Oh.
And then there's the computer thing. How do you know the computer's registering what you're doing? And then we got the stories now of, well, the CIA developed a computer program that can go into the election computer and change the results.
Hammer and scorecard.
Yeah. So, well, you know, okay, you know more than I do. I was never in the CIA. This guy was. He said that they developed it. Well, let's take what he said and see if the results parallel that. Like in the middle of the night, suddenly 100,000 votes came in and they were all for Biden. That seems unlikely.
Well, then you get on the internet, you got people have videos of Air Force, Navy, you know, Air Force military jets flying in with the ballots, you know. I mean, it's crazy. But see, you said in Tehran, it seems like for this color revolution, what they want, they almost want you to think there's fraud.
You have to cast.
So they win either way.
They can't. No, this is what's going to happen here. So we've got so I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to say that the courts are going to overturn Biden's election, and Trump will be embark upon his second term in office. As soon as that becomes clear, there will be rioting in the streets. So that's the next part of the color revolution.
Do you think? Okay, but do you think? Okay, we know that Jesus was crucified because Pontius Pilate, knowing he was innocent, caved in to the fear that if he didn't crucify him, there'd be an insurrection.
Right.
Okay. If the Supreme Court is like Pontius Pilate, isn't it possible that they can not do the right thing?
Look, they're not really comparable. If you're talking about Pontius Pilate, he's one man. He's a representative of a hated empire. Everybody knows he's on the other side. And those people are right there.
Okay.
And they could storm, you know, he's got guards there with swords. But, you know, how many people can... the danger to his life was imminent.
Okay.
I don't see that in
the
Supreme Court. I just don't see it. Now, it's not to say that they couldn't...
Don't forget, they just go to your house now. They go right to your house.
Yeah. Well, they know that. And they know that, and what we had was a lesson during this past summer of the George Floyd riots of what to expect. So do you want these people in your neighborhood threatening to burn your house down?
Everybody's got a gun now. They're waiting.
So that's what put Trump in office. I think that's what put Trump over the top. It was the fear of over law and order. Same thing as '68. Now it's Donald Trump is the only one who understands, the only one I can vote for, who is going to protect me from Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Pretty clear. I can't depend on my Democratic mayor, lesbian Jenny Durkin, Notre Dame graduate. She's not going to protect me in Seattle. Ted Wheeler's not going to protect me. He's a pawn of Antifa.
All you need is a good
Portland.
social worker to help you get through this.
The whatever the guy's name is in Minnesota, Minneapolis, where they did what he's a liberal who does what these people tell him to do, and now crime has skyrocketed because he's crippled the police. Do you want that? No, I don't want that. I don't think most of the American people want. We know what they're planning. We've seen it.
This is like saying the earth is flat. I mean, let's get rid of the police. The earth is flat? I mean, where are you coming up with this?
Do you think if you get rid of the police, crime will increase? Well, yeah, there's a criminal element who feels that they can now act out with impunity. There are certain cities where this has already been the case, largely university cities like Columbus, Ohio, where the students there are in total fear of being assaulted or robbed because the police have they're standing down.
Oh, they are in Columbus?
Yeah, I just got a report on that. Or what the police were sort of told to stand down in Chicago, and the result was mayhem.
Does anybody even know the theory behind defunding the police, or is this just raw propaganda? I mean, what's the theory? That we're all good people?
Well, the theory is that the police are responsible for the murder of George Floyd. The police, if we didn't have police, we wouldn't have these unpleasant confrontations where the cop pulls his gun, the white cop pulls his gun and shoots a black guy. It's obvious that the only problem here is that white cop pulling that gun and shooting that black guy. So you remove the white cop with the gun, well, suddenly these black criminals can commit crime with impunity.
Well, the only reason
you got that situation in Philadelphia, okay? Again, I hate to bring this up, but Larry Krasner, the Jewish prosecutor there, is a Soros guy. This is Soros money. And as soon as he gets in, he's not going to prosecute black-related crime, marijuana, stuff like that. Okay? Well, guess what? The criminality increases. And as soon as the criminality increases, suddenly you got this black guy with a knife going after a cop. Well, the cop shot him and killed him.
I saw that.
Okay, let me explain this to you.
But it wasn't. He had a mental problem. It wasn't anything criminal.
I understand. You may have you probably do have a mental problem if you think you're going to be able to subdue a cop with a knife when he's got a gun. You've got to be crazy. And the point is, if you want to live a long, productive life, don't do that because you're going to end up dead because the cop will shoot you, and it's self-defense. And he's the agent of the law. So what's the big deal? But that led to a riot. And then they had to send in the National Guard because the city of Philadelphia is incapable of enforcing the law, largely because of Larry Krasner, who won't prosecute crimes. And it turns out, wait a minute, they were all over the place. Kim Gardner in St. Louis, where we had that big, we've talked about that before, the whole statue thing. Okay, and instead of prosecuting criminals, she's going after the McCloskeys because they were going to defend their house. So this is the mess that we're in. But as I said, we understand it better now than we did before. I mean, if you have the mind to perceive what's going on, you can see pretty clearly what's happening.
But based on 1953 in Iran, you're saying that the pattern is that you have an election and then there's fraud, and you kind of want them to know there's fraud, so the other side gets mad.
Right.
So they don't. So if they win and nobody just ignores the fraud, you win there.
Right.
Then if they go crazy on the fraud, you win there.
Well, we're facing that challenge right now. So basically, you're facing the forces of law. Let's call them Donald Trump. Is facing precisely this dilemma. If you win, the revolutionaries have said basically, okay, If you go along, then you leave the White House, okay? If you're successful in contesting the fraud, then we will burn down your cities, the cities of America, including Washington, D.C.
Well,
so which is it going to be?
I just had somebody say that a younger person in the 20s, saying that's exactly how a lot of her friends are feeling. That they're voting for Biden to avoid.
How could a loser like Donald Trump ever win an election? All of my friends, you can just see it on Facebook. It's just the chatter on Facebook. You know, everybody I talk to hates Donald Trump. He couldn't possibly be. Well, maybe, honey, maybe it's because you're talking to a small group of people. Maybe that's the whole point of Facebook, is to give you the impression that there are all these people who think just like you, when it's an illusion.
Yeah, but when you...
It's three trolls in Tel Aviv pressing buttons.
Yeah, but when you were in 5th grade, you could have hated that teacher, and then when you had kids, and you put it in the 5th grade, not that you would send them public, then you send them to the teacher that you hated. Why? He was a good teacher. So the fact that they hate Donald Trump, what's that have to do with anything on whether he's doing a good job running the country?
So the question is, do we have rule of law or not? That's what this issue is right now. There's no other issue. Well, do we have representatives?
If the oligarchs can change the laws to their favor, they could argue.
They do that all the time.
And they say, well, we're under rule of law. What are you complaining about?
No, they've done that for years. I mean, basically, it was government by the rich and for the rich and of the rich. That's what it was. Everybody knew that. That's what got Donald Trump elected. You were there in South Bend, you know, when the big rally took place.
Yeah, we put them over the top.
Two parties who represented oligarchic interests because they pay you to do this. And this has submerged that issue, okay? So, for example, Jackie Walorski got swept in on Donald Trump's coattails here. Well, you don't represent the people of South Bend. You signed a pledge for the Israel lobby. You support the Israel lobby. You support the military-industrial complex. And if people here can get, you know, some decent-paying jobs, making Hummers, then that's it. That's the end of the story. We get the crumbs that fall off the table. And the people who contest it never contest the right issue. So a couple of years back, Joe Bach. Remember Joe Bach?
Yeah. We put it on the public access.
Right.
And
this is before we were on YouTube. So Joe Bach ran against Jackie. Joe Bach had been living in Palestine. Wait a minute, you lived with the Palestinians? I've never lived with Palestinians. So Joe, this means you found her Achilles heel. It's the Israel lobby.
Oh, no, that's right. No, I interviewed him here on the public access, and I pressed the Israel question, and he was all for it. He was behind in the election. He had nothing to lose. That's why he came on. His advisors, when they saw I pressed the issue, which got them all excited because that's who he is.
Right.
He's Mr. Middle East, and he's getting all into it. Well, he was instructed, I guess, that he was supposed to avoid that. And so they said, well, we can't play that. So you're not going to play that? You're behind. You have nothing to lose.
So who's representing? So this is all of this stuff now is being pushed to the side because who cares about Jackie right now? Of course she's a stooge of the Israel lobby. Of course that's true. But we have bigger fish to fry because the situation's gotten worse. It gets worse and worse and worse. And you just ignore that was yesterday. We got to feel our very existence. Well, it's true. It has gotten worse. Okay? But that doesn't change the problem. That doesn't change the dynamic. It's the same dynamic. Do we have representative government, or are these people simply pawns of the rich and the oligarchs?
I mean, people are they're flabbergasted. It's like the 9/11 trade towers, and the German guys interviewing Trump. They interviewed Trump the first day. He said, well, it was obviously bombs that brought it down. Well, then the German guy talks to him from Germany, do it in Germany and then in German and English, and he says, Mr. Trump, we thought the trade towers were built to handle jets hitting them. What happened? And Trump goes, yeah, but we forgot about when people want to be kamikazes. What can you do? And it got 1,600. They don't need. I mean, the fraud is so obvious. It's so obvious. Those trade talks.
So let's look at the bright side. We now this has been quick now. The reaction to the fraud is within hours.
I know it. 9/11.
9/11 it took years. Pearl Harbor, how long did that take? Kennedy assassination, how long did that take?
I don't think it's ever been resolved.
I mean, that was pretty much an open and shut case. It was closed before, and then you're watching, Jack Rubenstein come and murder. He's got connections with Meyer Lansky, and but no one's talking about this. Mm-hmm. It was just shut down immediately.
That lawyer in Louisiana, he'd come into the paper, but he didn't go anywhere.
No. So, but now suddenly we realize, no, this is happening right now, real time, and we got to do something about it. So you're going to Washington?
Yeah, I have a friend, he just called me today. He said, let's go.
And so there's going to be a big protest in Washington?
Yeah, on Saturday.
About the stolen election?
Yeah, that's the theme.
Okay, who's going to cover it? Do you want to take any bets?
No, that's what I said. I said, hold it here. If this is Alex Jones, and I said, I don't want to be going into a trap. So he said, well, we're going to, we'll be careful if we smell something, because how they're going to try to label it.
How many people are going to show up?
I heard 1 million.
Okay. I bet you it'll be like the Right to Life March. Every time that happens, it'll be like the anti-COVID protest in Berlin. Now you can take their picture. It's the same place. It's the from where, I don't know where exactly it starts, but you can see the Brandenburger Tor in the background, and that's a certain area, and you can look, and it's nothing but people. And so when it's when it's George Floyd protest, it's the same number of people, and that's 1 million people. Then it's the anti-COVID protest, and it's the same place, the same number of people, and it's 13,000. Wait a minute.
It's like the number of votes Trump got.
So, do you want to? Would you take bets about the report that's going to come out in the Washington Post? Now, this is the Washington Post. This is a local story for the Washington Post.
That's Jeff Bezos, right?
And now, yeah, they bought the thing, and they did nothing but campaign against Donald Trump for the entire election. They didn't even come close to doing journalism. This is not journalism. This is the propaganda ministry for the Democratic Party.
But what's going to happen? Okay, so if Trump wins and this movement kind of wins, they're going to kind of sweep 9/11 along with it. So. What's
let's look at what will happen if Trump wins. Can we go back and look at all of those articles that we've just been reading this week about President-elect Biden? Let's take it even further. One of the biggest scandals to come out of this thing is that the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops congratulated President-elect Joe Biden on his victory. Well, wait a minute, he hasn't won yet. And then they went on to say he's the second Catholic president of the United States. Well, he hasn't won yet. The election hasn't been called.
No, but they're all in the rectory watching Fox News for the last 10 years, and Fox News told them all.
So what is going to happen to the credibility of, let's say, the Catholic bishops now? They, as a group, they have endorsed this voter fraud.
The old-timers who don't feel like automatically just caving into everything. No, maybe the young people are used to, let's have peace, let's have peace. The old-timers may not be that way.
Well, we'll see, because there's going to be a massive loss of credibility, for the most part, among the mainstream media, they were on their last legs to begin with in terms of credibility.
They had nothing to lose.
Well, they were desperate. I think that they felt that this was...
Maybe this is their battle of the bulge. Maybe this is...
This is an all or nothing situation. I think that they had that sense of panic, that if Trump gets in for a second term, it's the end of the world as we know it. And they pulled out all the stops.
Yeah, both sides
think... And when you do that, they overplayed their hand. Their hand.
And now you're going to have Doug Collins, who is the pit bull defending Trump against impeachment. He lost the election in Georgia against the girl. So now he is Trump's point man, And they've succeeded in making Georgia say, we're gonna do a full audit, we're gonna do a full recount and a full, another one. Canvas. And Doug Collins is going to be a pit bull pressing it, and then all the other states are going to have to follow suit. So you're going to have Wisconsin is going to have to do it. I don't. This is Hitler losing the Battle of the Bulge. He couldn't have won to begin with, but they thought they had to do it.
I think Hitler could have won that battle. I think it was just they ran out of gas. They came close. But it was one of those decisive moments. Like it's just, we got to win this or it's all over. You know, we got to get to Antwerp. We got to get to those gasoline. We got to get the gasoline in Antwerp to put in the tanks, the diesel, whatever it is. We just got to do it. And they didn't do it and they didn't win.
And one guy said, you know, try to get him to surrender. He said nuts.
Yeah. Nobody knew what that meant. Nüsse? Der Army hat Nüsse gesagt.
Well, the guy who said it was half German, I'm sure, anyway.
Was bedeutet Nüsse? Wir haben eine anständige Frage gestellt und hat mit Nüsse beantwortet.
That's terrible.
That was the type of conversation that was going on in command control in the German army. So it's a defining moment because this is the moment of representative government. Do we have representative government or not? Can we elect someone that the oligarchs don't like?
Well, as we were saying at the breakfast Saturday, somebody brought it up that basically with Ginsburg dying, if she hadn't died, theoretically, the Supreme Court could...
Did she die theoretically?
No. I'm saying the Supreme Court might have decided the other way.
But wait a minute, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals overturned her death.
Oh.
Didn't you know that?
Well, so I'm saying, is it providential? Obviously, everything is.
Everything is providential. There's nothing outside of God's providence. But this has that kind of resonance of the resurrection. I can just feel that sense of resurrection here. I mean, what was the greatest catastrophe in human history? The Jews just murdered God. I mean, can you think of anything worse than that? They crucified God.
I mean, their Messiah, they missed the boat.
They missed their Messiah on top of that. They crucified him.
I think we messed
up.
Can
you imagine what it's like being, well, I guess we're walking back to the upper room and we're thinking, God, what do we do now? We thought he was God. We thought this was the beginning of something really big, and now he's dead. What do we do now? And then suddenly the tomb is empty. I mean, it was like the complete reversal. The absolute worst thing that could ever happen turned into the absolute best thing that could ever happen.
And nobody believed it at first. It was the women that reported it, and nobody would believe a woman back then.
So they run down, John runs down there, and the tomb is empty. Well, this was, I get this sense of reversal here. When I finished the Jewish Revolutionary Spirit, I said reversal is in the air. Yeah, it is. It's been 11 years, and there's been a lot of strife in that 11 years, but I still think reversal is in the air, and I think this is going to be an example. I think this. I just see it. I don't see any other alternative.
Well, it's going to depend on God's mercy. I mean, it's going to depend on crying out, and God intervenes and blesses us, apparently with a blessing maybe we don't deserve.
The Lord hears the cry of the poor. And I guess the Lord hears the cry of the deplorables. And this is going to be the revenge of the deplorables. I'm going out on a limb here. I mean, no one knows the future, but I mean, we all have to act as if we know the sun's going to come up in the morning. We all have to act as if it's going to get cold in winter, and you better get the warm clothing out. We all have to act on these, even though we don't know the future. And I'm saying this is where I see it going. And the main evidence, I think, is the hysterical tone among the mainstream media. And on that note, we got to end.
Okay. Dr. E. Michael Jones, this is Citizens for Community Media. And hopefully you take this back to your community and get people to look into this issue deeper. So until next time, Peter Helen.